A single mom crashed into a black SUV. The Mafia boss smiled and called her his wife. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's get back to our main character. Jessica Collins had always tried to keep a low profile. As a single mother working 2 jobs, life had become a blur of routine and exhaustion. Her daughter, Lily, was everything to her, and she worked hard to make sure she never went without. But that night, after yet another long shift at the diner, the last thing Jessica expected was to find herself in a situation that would change her life forever. The rain fell heavily as she drove down the slick streets of downtown, her car's tires skimming over puddles that reflected the city lights like colorful streaks. She was tired, too tired to care about the world around her. As she turned a corner, she didn't see the black SUV speeding toward her. The screech of tires, the blinding headlights, and then the crash. The impact sent her car spinning, but somehow she managed to regain control, stopping just inches from a fire hydrant. For a moment, everything was still. Jessica's heart pounded in her chest as she took a shaky breath, her hands gripping the steering wheel. The world outside felt distant and muffled. She looked up, and that's when she saw him, stepping out of the SUV, a tall figure dressed in an immaculate suit. His eyes locked onto hers with a cold, calculating gaze that sent an unexpected chill down her spine. You all right? His voice was low, smooth, with an accent that sounded like it belonged in a high-end restaurant. Jessica tried to steady herself, her hands still shaking from the shock of the accident. I'm fine. I'm so sorry. She didn't know why she apologized. It felt automatic, as if the whole thing was somehow her fault. The man took a step closer, and his eyes softened for just a moment, but there was still something menacing about him. You should be more careful. A woman like you shouldn't be on these streets alone. His words sent an unsettling feeling through her, though she couldn't place why. He wasn't angry. In fact, his tone was oddly calm, almost interested. I didn't mean to. Jessica stammered, still dazed. I didn't see you. The man, who Jessica now realized was far more than just an ordinary driver, didn't seem bothered by the accident. Instead, he smiled, a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. He glanced down at her, and then back at the car. This is your fault, but that's okay. Jessica blinked, confused by the strange way he spoke. What? She asked, her voice trembling. You crashed into me, he said, his smile widening. Now, you belong to me. You're my wife now. Jessica felt her breath catch in her throat, not understanding what was happening. She tried to say something, but the words wouldn't come. It wasn't anger or fear that gripped her. It was something else, something she couldn't shake off, like an invisible pull, compelling her to listen. I don't understand, Jessica said, her voice barely a whisper. The man chuckled softly. You will soon enough. He turned toward the car and signaled for his men to come closer. Jessica's mind raced as the realization hit her. This wasn't just an accident. This man, this stranger, had plans for her, and she had no idea what she was about to get tangled in. Jessica couldn't believe what she was hearing. She looked at the man, her mind racing, trying to make sense of his words. I'm sorry, but I don't understand, she whispered, her voice barely audible as the rain continued to pour around them. The SUV's headlights cast long shadows across the street, and the sound of the rain hitting the pavement filled the silence between them. The man took a step closer, his presence overwhelming. You're mine now, he said again, his voice steady and unwavering, almost as if he had said it 100 times before. Jessica took a step back, her heart pounding in her chest. What does that mean? She asked, panic creeping into her voice. The man didn't seem fazed. Instead, he smiled, but it was a cold, calculated smile. It means you don't leave. You stay with me. You're my responsibility now. His words hung in the air, heavy with meaning, and Jessica felt a chill run down her spine. She looked around, hoping someone would intervene, but the street was deserted. The city, usually so bustling, felt eerily quiet. Please, she said, trying to steady her breath. I have a daughter. I can't just go with you. The man's gaze softened for a moment, but his next words were firm. You have no choice. I'll make sure your daughter is safe. I'll take care of everything. You just need to trust me. Jessica felt her stomach churn. Trust him? This man, a complete stranger, was offering her a life she hadn't asked for. But something about the way he spoke, the calm authority in his tone, made her hesitate. For the briefest moment, she considered the offer. She had been struggling on her own for so long, trying to keep her head above water. Maybe this could be the chance for a better life. A life where she wasn't constantly afraid of what might happen next. But then the reality of the situation hit her. This wasn't a chance. This was a decision she was being forced to make. No, she said, her voice trembling. I can't. I won't go with you. The man's smile didn't falter. You'll come around, he said, his voice calm as ever. He stepped back, signaling for his men to move forward. Take her to the car, he instructed. Jessica's heart raced as two of the man's associates approached her, their eyes cold and unreadable. She stepped back again, her mind racing for a way out. She couldn't let them take her. Not like this. But before she could react, the man spoke again, his tone softer this time, almost as if he was trying to reassure her. You're not leaving me, Jessica. You're mine now, whether you like it or not. I'll make sure you're safe. You'll see. Jessica looked into his eyes, and for a moment, she saw something there. Something dark, but also something that seemed to promise protection. She didn't know if she could trust him, but she had no choice. The world around her felt like it was closing in, and the only option left was to go with him. Slowly, she nodded, her heart heavy with uncertainty. Okay, she said, her voice barely a whisper. I'll go with you. The man's smile deepened, and he nodded to his associates. Good, he said. We'll take care of everything from here on out. As they walked toward the waiting car, Jessica couldn't shake the feeling that her life had just changed forever. She didn't know what the future held, but she knew one thing for sure. She wasn't in control anymore. I walked into the sleek black car, the cold leather seats biting into my skin as I settled in. The doors shut with a soft thud, the sound of the rain outside almost deafening as the car pulled away from the curb. I didn't speak, couldn't. My mind was still reeling from what had just happened. The stranger, the man who had claimed me, had told me I belonged to him now. I couldn't wrap my mind around it, couldn't understand how my life had flipped upside down in a matter of minutes. As the car drove through the city streets, my heart hammered in my chest. What was happening? Where was he taking me? I glanced at the rearview mirror, catching the reflection of the man in the front seat. His face was calm, unreadable. His dark eyes were focused on the road ahead, and yet, I could feel his presence, like a weight pressing down on me. What do you want from me? I finally whispered, my voice barely audible over the sound of the rain. The man in the front seat didn't respond at first. His grip on the steering wheel tightened slightly, but that was the only sign he gave that he had heard me. The silence stretched on, thick and uncomfortable, before he spoke in a low voice. I want you to understand that this is not a choice. You're with me now, and I will protect you, but you will follow my rules. His words sent a chill through me, but I couldn't deny the sense of authority in his tone. This was not just some random man. He had power, influence, and something about the way he spoke made me feel small, insignificant. I don't need protection, I said, a little more forcefully this time. I have my life. I have my daughter. The man's eyes flickered briefly to the rearview mirror, his gaze meeting mine for a fraction of a second before returning to the road. Your life is mine now. Your daughter is safe, as long as you stay with me. You don't have to worry about her. I'll take care of everything. The words echoed in my mind, but they didn't make me feel better. If anything, they made my stomach twist in knots. I didn't trust this man. I didn't know him, and yet, he was making decisions for me, for my life, without asking. What if I want to leave? I asked, my voice trembling slightly. The car swerved to the left as we made a turn, and I felt my heart race. You don't have a choice, he said simply, his voice like ice. You're mine now, and you will stay with me. The words settled in my mind, like a cold reality I couldn't escape. And if I don't? I challenged, though deep down, I knew the answer. The man didn't respond immediately. The silence between us grew, and for a moment, I thought he wouldn't answer. But then he spoke again, his voice calm and certain. You will. You'll come to understand. I'm doing this for you, for your safety. But you will follow me, and you will be mine. The car continued down the road, the streets outside flashing past. My thoughts were in turmoil, but no matter how hard I tried to think of a way out, I couldn't escape the truth. This man had control, and I was just a pawn in his game. As the car pulled into a large, gated estate, my stomach dropped. This wasn't just a house, it was a fortress. High walls, security guards, and the overwhelming sense that I had crossed into a world I didn't understand. The car came to a stop in front of the grand entrance, and I couldn't help but stare at the mansion that loomed before me. "Welcome to your new home," the man said as the door opened, his voice low but strangely reassuring. I didn't move at first. This was it. My life had changed forever. There was no going back now. I stepped out of the car, my legs unsteady as I looked up at the massive gates that opened before me. The estate that loomed ahead was unlike anything I had ever seen before. It was beautiful, almost intimidating in its grandeur, with tall, imposing columns framing the entrance and a driveway that stretched for what seemed like miles. The stone path beneath. My feet felt cold, as though I were walking into a different world, one I had no part in. As I stood there, trying to process the overwhelming change that had just taken place, the man who had claimed me, Vincent Romano, stepped out of the car behind me. He was still wearing that same cold, calculating expression, but his presence felt different now, almost possessive, like a man who had won something and was savoring the moment. "Come with me," he said, his voice calm but firm. He didn't need to say more. There was something in the way he spoke that made it clear I wasn't going to have a choice. I followed him, my heart pounding in my chest as I walked behind him up the steps and into the mansion. The doors opened before we even reached them, and I couldn't help but feel the eyes of the guards as they watched me closely. The interior of the house was just as imposing as the exterior. Marble floors stretched out before us, polished so perfectly that they almost gleamed. The ceilings were high, the walls adorned with paintings that looked far too expensive to be in a home like this. I felt out of place, like an intruder in someone else's life. Vincent led me down a long hallway, his steps echoing in the silence. I kept my distance, unable to shake the feeling that I was being watched. Finally, we reached a large door, and Vincent turned to face me. "This is your room," he said, his voice still cold, though there was something softer in his tone now. "You'll stay here from now on." I glanced at the door, then back at him, my heart racing. "I'm not staying here," I said, my voice trembling with defiance. "I don't belong here." Vincent's eyes softened, just for a moment, and I thought I saw a flicker of something human in him. But it was gone as quickly as it appeared, replaced by the same impenetrable coldness. "You do now," he said simply. "This is where you'll be. You'll be safe here, I promise you that." I wanted to argue, to demand answers, but the words wouldn't come. I was trapped, and I knew it. Vincent turned and opened the door, stepping aside to let me in. I hesitated for a moment, my mind racing, but then I stepped inside. The room was massive, with a large, four-poster bed draped in dark velvet. The furniture was elegant, all polished wood and gold accents. It looked like something out of a movie, too perfect, too pristine. But the worst part was the emptiness. It felt empty, as if it were a stage set for a life that wasn't mine. "You'll have everything you need here," Vincent said, his voice soft but still commanding. "Anything you want, just ask. But remember, you're mine now." His words echoed in my mind, and I felt a lump form in my throat. I wasn't sure what was worse, the fact that I had no choice or the fact that I had no idea what he was going to do next. But as I stood there, in that cold, sterile room, one thing became clear. My life had changed forever, and I had no idea what kind of future awaited me. Vincent was right about one thing. I was his now, and I had no idea how to escape. I stood there in the middle of the massive room, the weight of Vincent's words still hanging in the air like a thick fog. "You're mine now," he had said, and no matter how I tried to shake it off, the meaning behind those words echoed in my mind. I turned slowly, taking in the lavish space around me. The four-poster bed with its dark velvet drapes, the antique-looking furniture, the expensive art on the walls. Everything screamed wealth and power. Yet, there was no warmth in the room, no feeling of home. It was a prison, beautiful and cold. I couldn't stop the tremor in my hands as I walked over to the large windows, peering out at the sprawling estate below. The rain had stopped, but the sky remained heavy with dark clouds, matching the tension I felt inside. I knew Vincent had brought me here for a reason, But what was it? What kind of man made such a claim on someone's life without hesitation, without even asking for permission? The sound of footsteps behind me made me turn. Vincent was standing in the doorway, watching me silently. His eyes, cold and calculating as always, were fixed on me. "I told you, you'll be safe here," he said, his voice low but firm. "You'll never have to worry about your daughter again." His words cut through the air, but they didn't comfort me. How could they? This wasn't safety. This wasn't what I wanted. "You don't know anything about me," I said, my voice trembling despite my attempt to sound strong. "You don't know what I've been through. I can't just accept this." He didn't move, just stood there, his gaze never leaving me. "I know more about you than you think," he replied, his voice steady. "I know your past, Jessica. I know what you've been through, and I know what it takes to keep you safe." My heart skipped a beat. How could he know? How had he learned so much about me? I had never told him anything. He must have been watching me for a while, but that thought only made me feel more trapped, more like a pawn in his game. "I'm not your possession," I said, my voice shaking with the weight of the words I was forcing out. "You can't just take over my life like this. I have my own choices." Vincent's expression softened for a moment, but it wasn't a smile. It was more like the calm before a storm. "You don't have a choice, Jessica. You're here now. This is your life, and you will follow my rules. But I'm offering you something most people would never get, a chance to live without fear." He stepped closer, his voice dropping to a whisper. "And if you stay with me, you'll be safe. No one will ever touch you again." I closed my eyes, trying to block out the feeling of helplessness that was threatening to overtake me. I wasn't sure what to feel anymore. I wanted to fight, to push back, but deep down, I knew that I didn't have the strength to do it alone. I had been running for so long, always trying to protect Lily, always trying to survive. And now, here I was, in a mansion surrounded by strangers, with no way out. "You don't have to trust me yet," Vincent continued, his tone softer now. "But I'll prove it to you. Give me time, Jessica. I'll show you that you're safer with me than anywhere else." I wanted to say no, to walk out that door and never look back. But something in his voice, something in his presence, kept me from moving. I couldn't deny that there was something magnetic about him, something that made me feel like I had no choice but to listen. But I wasn't sure if it was power or something else. "Fine," I said, the word leaving my lips before I could stop it. "But this doesn't mean I trust you." Vincent's expression shifted, just slightly, and for the first time, I saw a flicker of something human in his eyes. "I don't expect you to trust me right away," he said quietly, "but I will earn it, and I will protect you, no matter what it takes." I looked at him for a long moment, unsure of what to say. I didn't know what my future held anymore, but one thing was certain. My life had taken a turn that I could never have imagined. And now, I had to find a way to survive it. I woke up the next morning, the soft light of dawn creeping through the heavy curtains. My eyes fluttered open, and for a brief moment, I had forgotten where I was. Then the reality of the situation hit me all at once. The cold, unfamiliar surroundings, the lavish furnishings, and the overwhelming sense of being watched. Vincent's words from the night before echoed in my mind. "You're mine now." I squeezed my eyes shut, trying to block them out, but they wouldn't leave. I could feel his presence even when he wasn't there. There was no escaping it. I had been brought into this world, this life, and now I had to find a way to survive in it. I sat up in bed, running a hand through my messy hair. The room was too quiet, too still, and I felt like I was suffocating. I couldn't stay here. I had to get out. Slowly, I got out of bed and made my way to the door. I stood there for a moment, my hand hovering over the doorknob. Part of me wanted to leave, to run away and never look back. But the other part of me knew that wouldn't work. Vincent would find me. He would always find me. I took a deep breath and opened the door. The hallway outside was just as pristine as the room I had just left. I walked down the long corridor, my footsteps echoing in the silence. I didn't know where I was going, but I had to get out of this place, even if it was just for a moment. As I turned the corner, I nearly bumped into one of the guards stationed outside a door. He looked at me with a mixture of curiosity and indifference, his expression unreadable. "Is everything all right, Miss Collins?" he asked. I froze for a moment, unsure of what to say. "Yes," I replied, my voice trembling slightly. "I just needed some air." The guard nodded, not questioning me further, and stepped aside to let me pass. I continued down the hallway, my heart pounding in my chest. The air felt thick, oppressive, and I could hear the sound of my own breathing as I moved further away from my room. I turned another corner and found myself in what seemed to be a private study. The room was dimly lit, but I could make out the expensive furniture and the large desk in the center of the room. It felt like a place where decisions were made, where power was exercised. I couldn't help but wonder if Vincent had spent hours in here, making plans and decisions that affected the lives of so many people. I walked in, glancing around nervously. As I stepped further into the room, I noticed a photo frame on the desk. I walked closer, curious despite myself. The photo was of a man, Vincent, I assumed, standing with a woman. She was beautiful, with dark hair and a warm smile. But what caught my attention the most was the way Vincent was looking at her. There was something soft in his eyes, something I hadn't seen before. For a moment, I felt a pang of something I couldn't name. But before I could think too much about it, I heard footsteps behind me. I turned around, my heart skipping a beat. Vincent was standing in the doorway, watching me with that same unreadable expression. "I see you found my office," he said, his voice low and calm. "I didn't mean to intrude," I said quickly, taking a step back. It's fine," he interrupted. He walked into the room and closed the door behind him. "You're not a prisoner here, Jessica. You're free to move around. But remember, I am always watching." His words sent a chill through me, but I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. He stepped closer, his eyes fixed on mine. "You're safe here," he said, his tone soft but firm. "And I'll protect you. No one will hurt you while you're under my roof. But I need you to understand something. You're with me now. You belong to me, and you will follow my rules." I swallowed hard, trying to keep my composure. "I don't belong to anyone," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "You do now," he said, his eyes never leaving mine. "And you'll learn to accept that." He stepped back, giving me some space, but his gaze was still intense. "You can stay here as long as you like. You'll have everything you need, but you will live by my terms." I wanted to argue, to push back, but I couldn't. The way he looked at me, the power he exuded, it was too much. I felt small, insignificant in his presence. And yet, I knew that I had no choice. This was my life now. "Okay," I said softly, my voice filled with resignation. "I'll stay." Vincent's expression softened, just a little. "Good," he said, his tone almost approving. "We'll take care of everything from here on out." And just like that, I realized the gravity of the situation. I was here to stay, and I didn't know how to escape. I sat in the grand living room, the soft ticking of an old clock the only sound that broke the heavy silence. The mansion was as quiet as it was imposing. Outside, the rain had started again, pattering against the windows as if the world outside was somehow disconnected from the cold reality I had found myself in. Vincent had left me alone in this room for hours, and although I had tried to settle into the new environment, it felt like nothing more than a cage. The silence was overwhelming, and I could not shake the feeling that I was being watched. I stood up from the sofa, walking slowly to the large windows that overlooked the grounds. The sprawling estate seemed to stretch forever, with its perfectly manicured gardens and towering trees. It was beautiful, but it felt so far removed from everything I knew. I had never been in a place like this, surrounded by luxury and opulence that I could never have imagined. The door behind me opened with a soft creak, and I turned to see Vincent entering the room. His presence filled the space, like a storm cloud gathering on the horizon. "You should rest," he said, his voice calm, but still carrying that underlying authority that made everything feel like it was under his control. I didn't respond, just continued to look out the window, trying to steady my racing thoughts. "You're still adjusting," Vincent continued, his tone softer now. "I understand that. But you need to understand one thing." I glanced over at him, my heart pounding. "What's that?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "You belong here," he said, his gaze steady and unflinching. "You may not see it now, but you do. This is where you are meant to be." I felt a pang of frustration rising in my chest. "I didn't choose this," I said, my voice sharper than I intended. "I never asked for any of this." Vincent didn't seem taken aback by my words. In fact, he seemed almost amused. "No one ever asks for their life to change," he said. "But sometimes, fate has a way of making decisions for us. And this is your new life." His words hung in the air like a cold, inescapable truth. I didn't know what to say. Part of me wanted to scream, to run away, to find a way out of this twisted situation. But another part of me feared what might happen if I did. You don't have to like it, Vincent said, stepping closer. But you will come to accept it. And eventually, you will see that I am doing this for you. For your safety. His words were like a chain, wrapping around me tighter with each passing second. I turned away, unable to look at him any longer. The weight of his words was suffocating. I don't need your protection, I said, my voice shaking. I never asked for it. There was a pause before Vincent spoke again. You will, he said quietly. You'll come to understand why. The door closed behind him as he left, leaving me alone with my thoughts. His words lingered in the air, and I couldn't shake the feeling that this was all just beginning. That this life, this world he had drawn me into, was far from over. As the hours passed, I found myself caught between two forces, my desire to escape and the reality that I had no way out. This was my life now, and whether I accepted it or not, Vincent was right about one thing. He would make sure I was safe. But at what cost? And how much of myself would I have to give up to survive in this world? The questions filled my mind as I paced the room, unsure of what to do next. Vincent had given me no options, no choices. This was the life I had been thrust into, and there was no turning back. But I wasn't sure how long I could live like this, trapped between the man who claimed to protect me and the life I had lost. I needed answers, and I needed them soon. I woke up the next morning with a dull ache in my chest, a lingering feeling that I couldn't shake off. The room was still as silent as it had been the night before, and the weight of the decision I had made was starting to sink in. Vincent had left me in this cold, unfamiliar place, and as much as I tried to convince myself that I could escape, something deep inside me knew that wasn't an option anymore. I wasn't sure if it was fear or something else that kept me here. All I knew was that I had no way out. I pushed myself out of bed, the soft sheets still tangled around me, and walked over to the window. The rain had stopped, but the gray sky hung heavy above the mansion, casting everything in a somber light. I looked out at the sprawling estate again, trying to ignore the feeling of being trapped. As I stood there, I heard the faint sound of footsteps approaching. Vincent. His presence was impossible to ignore, like a shadow that always loomed over me. He entered the room without knocking, his gaze settling on me as he stood in the doorway. You're up early, he remarked, his voice calm as always. I didn't respond. Instead, I turned back to the window, my arms crossed tightly over my chest. The tension between us was thick, and I couldn't bring myself to speak. After a moment, Vincent walked further into the room, his steps deliberate. I know this is difficult for you, he said, his voice softer now, though there was still a firmness in it. But you need to understand, this is for your own good. I'm not doing this to hurt you. I closed my eyes, trying to push back the frustration that was building inside me. I never asked for this, I said quietly, my voice barely audible. You've taken everything from me. I don't know who you are, and I don't want to be a part of whatever this is. Vincent's eyes darkened, but he didn't react to my words. Instead, he stepped closer, closing the distance between us. I didn't take anything from you, Jessica. I gave you a chance, he said, his voice low, almost soothing. A chance to be safe. A chance to live without fear. I turned to face him then, my frustration bubbling over. You don't get to decide what I need, Vincent, I said, my voice shaking. You don't know me. You don't know anything about my life, my choices. You don't have the right to control me. Vincent didn't flinch at my words. He simply stood there, watching me, as if he was waiting for something. I'm not controlling you, he said, his voice steady. I'm protecting you. There's a difference. You're here because I'm making sure you're safe. No one can hurt you. Not anymore. His words hung in the air, and I felt the weight of them settle on my shoulders. He was right about one thing. No one had ever made me feel as trapped as he did. I don't need your protection, I said, my voice low and filled with defiance. I can take care of myself. Vincent didn't respond right away. He just studied me with those dark eyes, his expression unreadable. Then, finally, he spoke again, his tone softer but no less firm. You don't have to believe me now, Jessica. But you will. In time, you'll understand why I'm doing this. Why I'm keeping you here. I didn't know how to respond. His words made me feel like I was caught in a game I didn't understand, one where the rules were stacked against me. But as much as I hated the situation, a part of me knew that there was no escaping it. I was stuck here, In this mansion with this man who claimed to be protecting me. And no matter how much I resisted, I couldn't deny the truth. I had nowhere else to go. I turned away from him, walking toward the door. I'm not staying here, I said, my voice filled with determination. I'll find a way out. I don't belong here. Vincent didn't stop me. He didn't even move, just watched as I reached for the door. But as my hand touched the doorknob, he spoke one last time, his voice low but filled with an authority that sent a chill down my spine. You won't leave, Jessica. Not now, not ever. This is your life now. I froze, my hand still on the doorknob. His words echoed in my mind, and for the first time, I felt the full weight of my situation. There was no way out. I had already become a part of his world, whether I liked it or not. I stood there, my hand still on the doorknob, frozen by the weight of Vincent's words. You won't leave, Jessica. Not now, not ever. This is your life now. His voice lingered in the room, echoing in my mind. I hadn't expected him to be right. I hadn't expected to feel so utterly powerless. Yet here I was, caught in his world with no way out. The realization settled over me like a heavy fog, suffocating every ounce of hope I had left. I slowly pulled my hand away from the door, standing there in silence, trying to process the gravity of the situation. I was trapped. There was no escape. I had already been pulled into Vincent's world, and no matter how much I wanted to fight, I knew it was futile. The world outside that I had once known, the world where I made my own decisions, was gone. What I had left now was this mansion, this life, and Vincent, the man who held my future in his hands. Slowly, I turned around to face him. Vincent was still standing near the window, his eyes never leaving me. His presence was as imposing as ever, but there was something different in his gaze now, something almost tender. You'll understand soon enough, he said quietly, his tone softer than before. I'm not your enemy, Jessica. I'm your protector. I wanted to argue, to tell him that I didn't need his protection, that I could take care of myself. But the words caught in my throat. There was no point. He was right about one thing. I was stuck here. In this house, in this life. And no amount of resistance would change that. I don't belong here, I said, the words slipping out before I could stop them. Vincent's expression softened, but his eyes were still filled with an unshakable certainty. You do belong here, he replied. This is your home now, Jessica. You may not see it yet, but you will. His words hung in the air, and for the first time, I felt a pang of doubt in my chest. Was he right? Was this really where I was meant to be? I didn't know anymore. I didn't know what to think, what to feel. All I knew was that I couldn't keep fighting. I couldn't keep pretending like I had control over my own life. Vincent had taken that away from me. And now, I had to learn how to survive in this new world he had created for me. He stepped closer, his presence overwhelming. You'll learn to trust me, he said softly, almost as if reassuring himself. In time, you'll see that this is the best thing for you. I shook my head, trying to push back the confusion and anger that had been building inside me. I don't need you to take care of me, I said, my voice low, but firm. I never asked for this. Vincent's eyes darkened, but he didn't say anything. Instead, he simply nodded, as if accepting my words without question. I know you didn't ask for this, he said, his voice almost a whisper. But sometimes, the things we don't ask for are the things we need the most. I didn't respond. I couldn't. His words hit me in a way I hadn't expected. There was truth in them, something I couldn't deny. But that didn't mean I had to accept it. That didn't mean I had to let him control me. I need some time, I said, finally finding my voice again. I need to think. Vincent gave me a small nod, but his eyes were still intense, studying me like I was a puzzle he was trying to solve. Take all the time you need, he said, his voice steady. But remember, Jessica, you're not alone anymore. You're with me now. His words felt like a promise, but they also felt like a warning. And for the first time since I had arrived at this place, I wondered what my future really looked like. I had no idea what I had gotten myself into. But one thing was clear, I was no longer in control. Vincent had already made sure of that.